Hi, this is Hamada, and welcome to Final 50, where I travel to the last 50 countries on Earth. And today, we're doing a behind the scenes of Cape Verde, so that you can avoid making those common mistakes while maximizing your time on the ground and also staying within your budget. So let's get started. So Cape Verde is located about 385 miles off the coast of West Africa. It has a population of about 600,000 people scattered over 10 volcanic islands. And also what's interesting is Cape Verde has one of the highest standards of living in Africa due to a stable government and a stable, robust, forward-leaning economy. All right, let's do two facts and a fiction. At the end of the video, you'll find out which one of these is indeed a fiction. Point number one is only 10% of Cape Verde is arable. Number two is that the country was uninhabited until the Portuguese discovered it in 1456. And point number three is that in 1968, a ship ran aground in Cape Verde. And when the locals went to see what was in the hull, they discovered electronic synthesizers. This started a crazy musical movement called the Cosmic Disco Movement in Cape Verde in the 1970s. So wait till the end of the video to find out which one of these is indeed a fiction. So what was the overall goal of our trip? We really wanted to discover the music and the traditions of Cape Verde, as well as really see and explore the nature, the food, the culture of the islands. So check out the vlogs that we created. Two parts, part one about the music and part two really about the nature and the food, to really get a good understanding of the incredibleness of Cape Verde. And you'll find those in the comments below for your convenience. Now here's the path of the journey. We spent several days in the island of San Vicente and then did a day trip to the island of Santo Antão, which is actually one of the bigger islands in Cape Verde. We ended the trip in the island of Santiago in the capital of Praia and then headed back to Lisbon. So let's get a little bit more specific about the logistics that we covered on the trip. So we started the journey actually in Lisbon and took a direct flight to Praia. From Praia, the capital of Cape Verde, we flew on local airlines to San Vicente and then back from San Vicente to Praia and then used our return leg on tap back to Lisbon. Now, a couple of things to note. You cannot buy a ticket with your foreign credit card for a domestic flight in Cape Verde. So you need to find a travel agency, basically communicate with them, have them pay for the ticket, and then you basically reimburse them with a wire deposit to their account. Make sure obviously that you do your diligence on that agency and make sure that they are obviously legitimate, because you don't want to send money to someone that's going to rob you. So that is an important factor to kind of remember. Another quick factor to remember is like be smart about it. You can find flights from Lisbon to Cape Verde via, you can go to Sal, which is another island, you can go to Praia, and I think you can even go to San Vicente. So you really want to make sure of where the airline's landing, but there's some days that the airline doesn't go, TAP doesn't go to these islands. But if you can pull it off so that you're minimizing how much internal domestic flights you need, you can fly into Sal, for example, and then fly out of Praia, and then all you need is really one domestic flight to get you between the islands. Just something to kind of remember from the flight in terms of flight perspective. Other things that you want to think about is in terms of our accommodations. In terms of our accommodations, really we were recommended this boutique hotel in Mindelo in the capital of San Vicente. It was cool, I liked it. We spent I think about 2 nights there, and then I wanted something a little bit different. So while we were walking around town, and we only booked for 2 nights even though we were there for 4, I found this really cool hotel called the Mansa Marina, which is literally right there in the port. And it's an awesome, awesome hotel. Now it was low season, so we got a great bargain on a room that was right over the port. Absolutely beautiful. So I definitely recommend that. Maybe just book 2 nights and then you can explore the island and find another place that you like and you want to enjoy. And in Praia, we just spent the night in an Airbnb kind of slash hotel in the center of Praia in a safer neighborhood, which was great because it allowed us to be able to get taxis and get between different places. That was very, very important to us because we had limited time in Praia. In terms of transportation in Mindelo, we rented a car, and that was very important because if you're going to rent a car, you want to make sure you're not going with a travel agency that's going to make you pay in cash or make you pay all up front. And you do want to make sure that you ask for insurance. And it was tricky because it's kind of expensive to rent a car in Mindelo, but definitely worth it so that you can get around the island without inhibition. And that was really important for us because we really wanted to explore that island. And we did the same thing in Santo Antão, rented a car right there from the pier, found a great car, rented it, went all around the island, then got back to the pier, and then took the ferry back. And that also tells you a little bit about the ferry. The ferry was, important to get the ferry and find out the times. And one trick to do is use one company to take you there and another company to bring you back so that you can take the earliest ferry out and the latest ferry back in. And oftentimes the ones that go earliest will come back early, and the one that goes later we'll come back later. So just kind of just get one way there and one way back. I think that will be more helpful so you can maximize the time in the different islands. In terms of costs, really the islands are not that expensive. There are certain things that are just a little bit out of place, but accommodations, food, even some transportation was fairly reasonable. But just be on your A game and make sure that you do some price checking and so forth, because you don't want to be gouged. And the food was great, and again, quite reasonable in the end of the day. So in terms of safety, I didn't have a lot of issues there, though I was definitely vigilant when I was in Mindelo and even in Praia, not to go down like dark alleyways and stuff like that. We did see some people that were drinking and so forth, but we stayed away from them. We kind of stayed in well-lit areas and so forth. You just want to be, cautious of that when you're traveling to Cape Verde, just to be on your A game so that you don't kind of like let your guard down. Anything can possibly happen. So here are your 5 do not do's in Cape Verde, one by one for you. Don't eat in public unless you want to share your food with someone sitting next to you. That's just a cultural thing that they do in Cape Verde. Don't come to Cape Verde and miss out on the music scene. It's one of the most incredibly musical countries I've ever been to, and something you really, really want to explore. Don't miss out on checking out different islands in Cape Verde. Each one is so different in its own right. Volcanic, desert, crystal waters, lush vegetation, incredible history. There's just so much that each island offers. So try to check out at least a couple so that you get a good sense of what Cape Verde can offer you. Don't come in on a Sunday and expect to do touristy things. They observe the Sabbath and things are pretty slow on Sundays. Don't wander around late at night, especially in the capital like Praia, because there are all kinds of things that could potentially happen to you if you're not careful. So here are a couple of highlights of the trip that we had in Cape Verde. In San Vicente, when we rented the car, we went all around the island and found some incredibly deserted beaches, which were absolutely beautiful. They were sand dunes that went right into the in the water, and it was just crystal clear. Water was warm, absolutely beautiful. We checked out a cafe called Bambu Minunu, which was an incredible cafe right in the heart of Mindelo, and it was beautiful because what we did is we spent hours with the owners really learning about all the musical traditions and history of Cape Verde, which was so magical and so rare that you have these opportunities. So definitely check out that cafe in Mindelo when you go there. Another highlight was really hiking in Santo Antão. The place is so lush and green, and so we decided to rent a car, and every couple of maybe 10, 15, 20 miles, we would just stop and just go and explore into the valleys and into the countryside. And it was so beautiful. So I really recommend it. And we went at a time when it was very green and lush because it had been raining a lot. So we were really fortunate, but it's definitely worth seeing how raw and beautiful the lush vegetation is in Santo Antão. While we were in Santo Antão, we also stopped along the coast, this beautiful lighthouse, which I'd never really explored inside a lighthouse. We were lucky that the guy who was kind of overseeing it let us in. We gave him a little bit of money, and he took us to the top, and we just kind of saw a beautiful, almost 360 view of the island of Santo Antão. Really worth it, and just very special. In Santiago Island, I was convinced to get a haircut. It was the first time in 2.5 years that I went to a barber to cut my hair. So I was a little nervous. I'd been cutting my own hair since COVID, but we got there, and luckily for us, there was a guy who spoke English who was able to explain what I wanted, and they did a really bang up job on my hair. Awesome haircut. And it was only $3. Really cool experience that we had in Santiago Island. And here's what I want to call the moment, and I try to do these on every one of the trips to kind of really relate to you the time that I felt such an emotional connection to the experience I had on the ground. And in this case, we were in San Vicente, and somebody had told us, why don't you go check out the swimming with the turtles, which is actually on a beach near the airport. So I'm like, first, why would I want to go to a beach near the airport? It's probably gonna, it's gonna suck. And number two is I've already swam with turtles back in Mexico. But I said, let's try it. We got there, a local fisherman said, hey, we'll take you out with our crew. We went out there, just us, I think us or maybe one other boat, and they baited in the water the turtles, and suddenly they were everywhere swarming. And so we decided to jump in, but we didn't have a GoPro. So we jumped in with the iPhone and just took footage underwater with the iPhone. Thank God it didn't break on us. We immediately went back, put it in a bowl of salt of rice. But what incredible footage we got, and what an incredible experience to be swarmed by turtles all around you, and even manta rays and their fish and all kinds of incredible things. It's just so emotionally moving to be engaged with nature, and it was really one of the highlights of the trip to Cape Verde. Well, I hope you enjoyed this behind the scenes to get a better idea of what you can do in Cape Verde on a budget and with minimal time. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below, and we'll do our best to respond to you and do everything we can to create a dialogue and a conversation. I want to learn from you, and I hope that you're able to glean some inspiration and motivation from the trips that we take around the world. Also, make sure to check out the vlogs that really are able to put this whole experience into a beautiful journey and story for you, and the blog, which really kind of spells out everything we did in a systematic manner. And here is the fiction. It's the last one. There was no boat that ran aground in 1968, but there's an album, and I'll post a link to it in the description below, which describes how the producers of the album created this crazy fiction that this boat ran aground and there was synthesizers and it started this whole movement in Cape Verde. In reality, it didn't happen. The only time something that kind of tangentially happened like that was a boat ran aground that had bells destined for a church in Brazil. It ran aground in Cape Verde, and eventually they got the bells to Brazil. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this, stay curious, and I look forward to seeing you on my next journey.